This is the first of two videos. In this video, part 1, we will look at the ESIF full application form. In part 2, we will look at some of the advice we have received from the managing authority in completing ESIF full applications. Please make sure you read the full application guidance. The reference on the screen may be updated periodically, so please check that you are reading the latest guidance. Some general comments. Make sure your application is factual, informative and focused. Use bullet points, images and tables where appropriate. Supply supporting evidence appropriately and make sure you have read the operational programme and the relevant LEP ESIF strategy. Familiarise yourself with your outline application which you've already submitted, the call specification to which you are responding, the relevant operational programme, whether it's ESF or ERDF, the relevant targets and priorities of the LEP ESIF strategy, and the national rules and guidance, whether they are ERDF or ESF. Some top tips. Ensure you read the guidance document thoroughly. Set aside plenty of time to familiarise yourself with the key documents. When completing the full application form, put yourself in the position of the reader. Explain things clearly in layperson's terms. Remember that the reader may not be familiar with your proposed activity or organisation. Do not use acronyms. If you do, clarify what they stand for. Do not use buzzwords that the reader may not understand. Be focused and realistic. Remember that a concise application incorporating graphics and images where appropriate may be easier to digest. Strategic fit. Make sure your project fits in within the relevant ERDF and ESF operational programme. In addition, make sure you've read the LEP ESIF strategy and you are able to put your project in the context of that. And finally, make sure you understand the difference between delivery partners, subcontractors and strategic partners. Some other issues to consider. Milestones. When are the key events for your project going to occur? Match funding. Make sure your match funding in your application form matches the match funding in your finance tables. Remember, you should supply a granular breakdown of your project. There is no standard template for this, so an appropriate Excel spreadsheet will suffice. Make sure you understand the different categories of region that your project will operate in, because this will have implications for the intervention rate that will apply. And then finally, the issue of income generation. In an ideal world, your project should not generate income because this will be netted off any potential future grant. Some other things to bear in mind. European structural investment funds operate in calendar years, January to December. Be as realistic as possible about when expenditure will occur and be defrayed. European structural investment funds operate on the basis of defrayed expenditure, i.e. when a payment leaves a project's bank account, not when an invoice or cheque has been written or sent. Consider carefully the time requirement to get the project started. Will it be necessary to factor in time for recruitment, procurement and formalising a partnership? Most projects spend very little in their first couple of quarters. European structural investment funds are reimbursed upon submission of a claim. The applicant must ensure there is sufficient cash flow to manage the project. Include sufficient resources to administer and manage a European structural investment fund project. Retention, normally 10%, is held back at the end of every European structural investment funds project whilst the final claim and final verifications are carried out. Project costings. Your project costing will need to be split into 3 categories. Direct costs. These are all costs other than direct staff costs that are directly attributable to the project. Direct staff costs. This includes salaries and on-costs of staff engaged in activity directly related to the implementation and management of the project. Staff could work 100% of their time on project activity, or part of their time, with all hours including the time spent working on the project recorded on suitable timesheets. Indirect costs, or sometimes called overheads. Any costs which do not fall within the direct staff costs category or the direct cost category are de facto indirect costs and will be claimed using a predetermined flat rate. Such costs do not have to be individually identified or listed within an application. For ERDF projects, this flat rate is 15%, though for R&D projects, 25% can be applied. For ESF, the 50% rate can also be applied. There is another option which is 40% for direct and indirect costs. The 40% flat rate differs from the previous options as all eligible costs, both indirect and direct, are calculated on 40% of the eligible direct staff costs which are being claimed. Finally, for staff whose time needs to be recorded on timesheets, you need to use a simplified hourly rate calculated on the latest documented employment costs, divided by 1,720 hours. This is an EU requirement and cannot be amended. More information on simplified costs and hourly rates is discussed in the relevant ERDF ESF guidance document. TAP will be producing a separate video on simplified cost options, which will go into this issue in more detail. You will need to complete an outputs and results table, and there is separate guidance on the definition of each output on results, which you will need to read before completing these tables. Make sure the outputs and results you submit in the outputs and results table tally with the outputs and results in the actual application form itself. You'll need to think about project management and governance. Who does what? What are the skills, experience and knowledge of the people involved in managing this project? How will you as the applicant ensure the ESIF rules will be followed? Who will collate, check, verify outputs and claims? Who will check if the end beneficiaries are eligible? Who will manage delivery partners? As we've said before, make sure you have a clear understanding of the difference between delivery partners and subcontractors. Financial management and controls. In your application, you will need to outline what your financial management and control procedures are, how you will manage documents, what your schemes of delegations are, i.e., who will sign off the claims that you submit to the managing authority. Are all the parties in your project able to comply with the defrayal rules? Can your accounting software and systems demonstrate defrayal? And as we said before, ESIF funding is paid in arrears, so can your organisation cope with the fact that your payments may not be received for some months after your claim has been submitted? Compliance. There are a number of important compliance issues that you'll need to understand and appreciate as you go through the application process. Firstly, procurement. As far as ERDF projects are concerned, there is a procurement aid memoir which outlines a number of key documents that you will need to collate and retain, and which are likely to be audited at a very early stage. There are annexes at the end of the full application form relating to compliance which you will need to complete where relevant. Second important compliance issue is state aid. In general terms, GBA or the General Block Exemption Regulations are preferable to de minimis for ERDF applications, but you need to seek appropriate legal advice and submit this with your application. You will have to pay for this legal advice. But you also need to think about how you will monitor your state aid compliance throughout the lifetime of the project. Finally, you will need to comply with the EU publicity requirements. And again, these could be checked at a future audit. Cross-cutting themes. You will need to look at the issues of sustainable development and equality and diversity in the context of your project. Don't just think about applying a generic corporate sustainable development and equal opportunities plan to your project. You will need to devise something that specifically relates to what you intend to do. For ERDF projects, you would need to complete a summative assessment or an evaluation. This comprises a logic model which basically outlines the key elements of why you are pursuing the project you are, and a summative assessment plan. There is more guidance available on summative assessment which you will need to read. ESF evaluation. Be prepared to have available to Department of Work and Pensions the following if requested. A. Measures taken to provide information and publicity for the services that you are offering. How you are putting the horizontal principles of equal opportunities and sustainable development into practice. C. Case studies of good practice projects. And D. A summary of the projects, its achievements and the lessons learned. Declaration and signature. Don't forget to complete the declaration and signature at the end of the form and insert the applicant name in the final pages of the application form where necessary. When considering applying for ESIF funding, you must always refer to the guidance. Here is the link to the .gov.uk specific guidance. The TAP partnership runs workshops throughout the year, so please visit the TAP website or sign up to our database. The link is on the screen. These bite-sized videos are designed to provide a brief overview of topics associated with ESIF funding. We hope that they have provided you with more insight into the areas you should be considering when thinking about or during the application stage for ESIF. The videos are only a small element of what the Technical Assistance Partnership Project offers, and if you would like to sign up for one of our workshops, many of the topics from the bite-sized videos will be covered in more detail. Members of the Technical Assistance Partnership can be contacted on the numbers here or via the TAP email address, tap@eastriding.gov.uk. We would welcome your feedback on this bite-sized video and would be grateful if you could fill out a short survey to let us know what you think and help us inform future video content. Please return to the TAP website on the screen where you can click on a link which takes you to the survey.